best are taken to Babylon. We know that they eventually destroy the temple. We know that for Jerusalem, for God's people, that their identity is shaken because of the invasion of Babylon. I'm going to make some correlation and connections, hopefully tonight, where maybe our identity doesn't get shaken just because we've had invasion as well. It seemed like if you were looking from it from a perspective that God had lost the battle. But I would like to say that God hadn't lost the battle, but God was chiseling away to make his masterpiece complete. A hard concept for me to really grasp is that God sometimes uses evil for his good. That's a really difficult concept for me. It's hard for me to understand that sometimes God uses people that don't call on the name of Jesus for his will and to promote his will and his goodness. That's a hard concept for me to understand. But I think that we can understand that Babylon as a symbol, in the book of Daniel, we see that it's a symbol of how this counterculture to God's way of living exists, and the call to us who proclaim God to live. Now, if you have a Bible with you, would someone turn to Jeremiah chapter 29, and I'd like for you to read verses 4 through 7. Who'd be willing to do that for me tonight? Remember, this is class time. 29, 4 through 7. Do you need the microphone?
No, sir.
Okay.
This is what the Lord of the hosts of God of Israel says to all the exiles I deported from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters to men in marriage so that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there, do not decrease. Seek the welfare of the city I have deported you to. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, for when it has prosperity, you will prosper.
I think this really needs to be the basis for our study tonight. How do we take the cross to Babylon? Is we have to realize that no matter where we are, no matter where we set up residence for the time being, and I'm going to say for the time being, and you'll see why later, that God has sought and seeks for us to thrive where we are, to bloom where we're planted. I love in this that he says, build houses, to plant gardens, eat produce that you grow, take wives for your sons and husbands for your daughters. Let your family multiply. Seek the welfare of the city for which you live. Now, that passage speaks to me because sometimes we live in a city that seems counter to what our beliefs are. And it's a human desire. It makes it's rational in my human mind to think if it's counter to my beliefs, that I should be opposed to it, versus what I think we read here, that even though they may be counter to my beliefs, that I can still live in such a way. That I can still pray for its welfare. That I could still be a member in good standing of a community. I think that's an important groundwork for us to start, because I'm not sure that we can, without creating goodwill in the way that we live, ever influence anyone for the cause of Christ if we're not willing to plant our roots with them, if we're not willing to be with them. I think there's some things that we have to realize. 1 Peter chapter 5, we're going to be in 1 Peter a lot tonight. Chapter 5, verse 13 says, she who is Babylon, he's speaking of Rome here, who is likewise chosen, sends you greeting. We see that Babylon is not just this city, that it's this moment of power, it's this place, it's this counterculture. It represents cultural pressure. The word Babylon represents moral compromise. It represents idolatry to power, to pleasure, and to self. It represents a system that seems to oppose Christ. And even with that being said, we're told to set up shop. We're told to live in such a way that our families grow. Not just our families, but our residents. And so the church has always been called to coexist in Babylon. I want you to turn again to 1 Peter. Let's go to chapter 2. I think this is one of the major passages that we have to talk about, starting in verse 9, going through verse 12. Who also would like to read tonight? I've had my good friend, Aaron Morrison, my second good friend. I have two. Sorry.
But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles in order, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation.
Thank you, Aaron. And again, this is a passage that you ought to have marked. How do we live in Babylon? I think the first thing we have to do is realize that though we're exiles, we're not owners. This isn't where we live to last. This is a moment of our time realizing that we have a home waiting for us that's better. But he calls us to remember who we are. You guys know that I have a saying that I like to use, I have used for many years, heard my entire life. Remember who you are and whose you are. Grant Mitchell, you never heard that, did you? Maybe a time or two. But let me remind you who Peter says we are. He says we're a chosen people. He says we are a royal priesthood. He says we're a holy nation. He says we're God's own possession. He also says that we're foreigners or aliens, resident aliens, right? That we are sojourners. And so I think the first question I'd like to ask is, what does it look like to live as an exile, but not be filled with anger, fear, or to withdraw from those you're around? What does it look like to be in exile and not to be angry about it?
You asking us to answer?
Do what?
Are you asking us to answer?
Sure, that's not rhetorical. Give me some ideas.
I think you have to view the culture around you as not your enemies, but as your mission field. I think when you view them as opposition and enemies, then you're going to view them in an approach of hostility. You don't have to agree with them. You can vehemently have disdain for what they stand for. That doesn't make them your enemy. It makes them a mission field.
So well said. And I hope you heard that over here. They're not your enemy, right? They're your mission field. I thought that the three characteristics, the three states of being that I spoke of are uniquely different in the way that you would deal with it. Like, how are you not angry? I think one thing you have to realize is that God has purpose. And sometimes the purpose that God has isn't our desires. And sometimes God puts us in places that we wouldn't choose for the purpose of a mission field, not to create enemies. But then what about this idea of being fearful? You know, how can we be exiles in the world we live in? This isn't our home. We're sojourners, and not be fearful, because normally fear is really the origin of anger and hate. How do you stay away from fear? I think you have to start with this incredible trust for God. Like, I'm not sure any of us can live and bring the cross to Babylon if we don't trust that God has us exactly where He wants us to be. And no matter what difficulty we face, that He's walking with us.
It doesn't come all at once necessarily.
There you go.
So maybe today we're having a good day, and it's easy to see that God's in control and I can trust Him. Maybe tomorrow's not a good day,
That's right.
and I might be afraid, but I get back up again.
That's right.
People around me to encourage me. Remember, God's got it.
That's right.
So getting back up, it's not well, you better have it all, or you got nothing. You better keep it.
Yeah, Heidi, I wish they would have given us some times when Daniel had the pity party. Because we look like Daniel has this like Superman, cape and S on his chest. And I'm like, I guarantee you there was a moment when he's like, well, I ain't believing this. There was moments where, in the way I would say it in Alabama, that he was wallowing in it. You know what I mean? And if I were way back home, it'd be wallowing in it. Right? For those that aren't from Alabama, that would be wallowing. Yes.
So I've struggled with trust a lot.
Yeah.
And the way to stave off fear has been to look at the next right thing of serving other people.
Okay.
And that takes the focus off myself. And until I've trusted.
Man, I hope you can hear over here. Kim, wisdom right there. She said the way that I've dealt with a lack of trust, which we all struggle sometimes to trust. The way she's dealt with it was through serving. Man, I heard this preacher preach a couple weeks ago. And there was this sermon, serving like Jesus. And whew, man. It was terrible. Anyway, no, but that's it, Kim. I think you're right. We're going to talk about that later. You and I are on the same wavelength.
Can I say something?
Please.
I don't think my wife's here yet, so don't tell her I said this.
Well, this is just live stream, so it's good. So.
I'm looking at these people that are sojourning in a country that's not theirs. Mm-hmm. And I just can't help but think about our Muslim neighbors right now that may be facing some persecution because of what's going on in the world. And I would just challenge, if you know someone that's of that background, especially if they're Persian, to just reach out and say a nice word. Tell them that you're sorry that things like that are happening, and that you hope for a wonderful outcome and people are able to stay safe. Just something positive, encouraging, so that they know that Christians don't hate them. That Christians love them. And if you don't know one, just come with me to the Y, because half the Y is foreign.
You're ready there.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think you and Kim are really summing up the whole lesson tonight. If you only came in for that part, you've heard it, right? You serve and you reach out in love and care, right? We're going to talk more about that. Here's something I want to tell you. What do you do? What do you do when you're exiles and you don't want to live in anger and you don't want to live fearful and you don't want to live withdrawn from the people that are around you? You realize we shine. We don't hide. God has called us to shine. Will somebody turn to Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 through 16 and read that for me? Hands are shooting up like crazy. I'll read. Who? Okay, Michael.
All right. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven.
Now, you've been called to shine. You've been called to be this light to the world. Now, you need to understand, when this was being written, the church was dealing with mass persecution. They dealt with Nero, and we've talked a little bit. Mark's even mentioned how Christians would be impaled and set on fire to light the city in his gardens. They were dealing with Roman Empire persecution that goes way beyond just Nero. They were dealing with pagan culture, and yet Christianity was spreading like wildfire. Why? There weren't these great billboards. There weren't these great YouTube channels, or there weren't these incredible outreach in social media. But there was an outreach, wasn't there?
They looked persecution and death in the face and approached it with joy, not happiness. And everyone's like, whatever they do. Like, what is that? You know? Because they approach it different than the normal person would.
Aaron, you're saying there was something so different about the way that they lived that everybody else had. I need what they have. I need that confidence. I need that joy. I need that care for those around them. Even those that don't believe the same way that they believe, they still cared. And they were these upstanding, right people in the community that lived above approach. You see, I think the darker the culture, the brighter our light can be. I think we have to learn to resist without retreat. And I'm afraid a whole lot of Christians seek to retreat instead of letting their light be shining in this world. I face that same tug. Be honest with me. How many of you have ever thought, well, let's just move to the country, or sell it all and move? Like, you been there? Yeah. But I got to tell you, as much as sometimes my heart has that desire to escape and to retreat and to circle my wagons, that's not what God has called us to. That would be putting our light under a basket or a bowl. That would be having my light for just a few to see, that you would lift up the bowl and just let them peek under it. But God says, put it on a stand. And so we see Daniel refusing to bow down in Daniel 3. We see him continuing to pray in Daniel 6. And we see him still continuing to serve the kingdom with excellence. He had his line in his saying that he wouldn't cross. Well, I'm not going to do that. I think of that old Meatloaf song. Does anybody know what I'm talking about there? Anybody know? If you know the Meatloaf song, I won't do that. Raise your hand. You're all old. Okay, anyway. I won't do that. Donnie Hudson will share that song with us later tonight. He'll sing it for us. You see, what I think we have to figure out is how do we have conviction without hostility? How can we be present but not compromised? How can we have courage but escape being arrogant? Now, I'm trying to lead up to this point because now all of a sudden what I want to do is we've tried to set the groundwork for you of what Babylon is, and even that we live in Babylon today. And so now, if you don't mind, can I talk to you about taking the cross to Babylon? If someone has a Bible, if you'll turn to Romans chapter 1, verse 16, I'd like to start with that. Who would mind reading Romans chapter 1, verse 16? All right, Kenny.
For I am not ashamed of this good news about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile.
For I am not ashamed. For I am not ashamed of the gospel. For I'm not ashamed of this good news. For I'm not ashamed. My question is, why would he be ashamed? Because what Paul is actually saying here is the world is confused that I'm not ashamed. They think I should be ashamed. And Paul says, I'm not ashamed. I won't be ashamed. Look at Galatians 6:14. Someone read Galatians 6:14 for me.
But far be it from me to boast except in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, by which the world has been crucified to me and I to the world.
You see, Paul says, I am not ashamed because I will boast about the cross, and everybody else is ashamed about the cross. Let's look at the cross for a minute. What was the cross? It was the most brutal form of capital punishment that was created during that time. The brutality was incredible. I could read you a medical journal article that I have in my files at school. But I have to be careful because I had a student pass out one day when I was reading about the brutality. When I was reading about how shredded a back might be after the lashes, that organs would actually be visible through the lacerations. When I talked about the loss of blood and still trying to carry a cross, when I talked about the unbelievable way that cross would have been put on his head and the thorns would have jabbed down into his skull. You see, crucifixion was meant to be an embarrassment. Not only for the one that was convicted to be crucified, that had that sentence, it was supposed to be an embarrassment for anyone that had associated with them. We're going to embarrass every ounce of you. We're going to embarrass your family. We're going to embarrass your friends. We're going to put him on a pole. We're going to put them on a pole for everyone to see. We're going to strip him naked. Now, how do you feel? And Paul says, I will not be ashamed. You will not be able to make me feel ashamed. And I will boast about the cross that you meant for shame, but God created it to be my salvation. Look, nobody in the first century is wearing cross necklaces, I promise you. Nobody in the first century is like, I want a big cross tattooed on my chest right here. Nobody. But what does the cross mean today? Sacrifice. Love for your enemies. Forgiveness. Truth wrapped in grace. And so now crosses adorn our walls in our homes, and we wear them as jewelry on our neck, and we even imprint them on our bodies. But we didn't have the same pressure that Paul had for it to be shameful as it meant in the first century. But yet we are still called. We are called to be boastful because of its saving grace. How do we take the cross to Babylon? Number one, this is the note-taking time in case you need to know. The way we take the cross to Babylon is through personal holiness. Look at 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 15 and 16. It says, "But as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy." Now you need to understand holiness. Holiness is not moral superiority. It's visibly a different way to live. We are all broken. We're all needing of the blood of Christ. And the only way we become holy is when He covers our shortcomings for us to become holy. So live like it. Live like it. Live in such a radical way that people see you and they're confused by the way you live. Live like it. How do you take the cross to Babylon? One step at a time. Living holy lives. Because the one who has called you is holy. Number two, not only through personal holiness do we carry the cross to Babylon, but number two, we carry the cross to Babylon through relational faithfulness. I want you to look at 1 Peter chapter 3. Starting in verse 1. Now, this is written specifically to wives who are married to non-believers, but I think it really should be a pattern for all of us to live. And it says this, "Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won over without a word by the conduct of their wives." You see, I think God is calling us to live out our faith in relationship with people. Now, specifically, we see that Peter is talking about how wives live out their faithfulness to their unbelieving husbands and how their actions, the way they live with them, without even a word mentioned, can convey and produce in them a desire to live the way they're living. That can convict them that something needs to change in me. How do you take the cross to Babylon? You be that kind of friend. You have those type of relationships, like even Donnie was talking about. You go up to people and you show them that you care. Because that old adage, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care for them. Many of you have heard me say, I think you have to earn the right to tough love people with hard words. But earn the right. And how do you earn the right? The only way you earn the right is to love people radically. You love them so much that they can't help but know, man, they love me. And now I do understand that looks different for every one of us. Because we have different gifts and talents and opportunities and experiences. But how do we bring the cross to Babylon? Let's love people like the cross has loved us. So how do we take the cross to Babylon? It's through personal holiness. It's through relational faithfulness. And Kim, this one's for you. Through sacrificial service. How do you carry the cross to Babylon? Well, here in the South, it may be one casserole at a time. Right? It may be one pickup truck at a time. It may be one chainsaw at a time. It may be one phone call at a time. Right before everybody started coming to church, I've been here all day. On Wednesdays, this is where I live. I get here at 7:15, and well, here we go. And so I was preparing for our lesson tonight. I was thinking about things I wanted to say to you, and I needed to go ahead and move my truck. I normally park in a little circle because there's no parking, and Michelle can move my truck if they need to move the truck during the school day. And so to save a spot for a faculty member that's closer, I don't mind walking over. And most of the time I'm coming over to church anyway. And so I was going out to move my truck, trying to get my mind on what I wanted to say to you tonight that would be maybe something that would be helpful. And I was moving my truck, and I needed to quickly get back to maybe go over a few more things. And as I'm in the parking lot about to get in my truck, a woman who I've never seen before, her name's Gigi, said, "Is the chapel open?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." And she goes, she had a cigarette in her hand, and she had a pack in her other hand, and she had her lighter. And she goes, "Well, I need to go in and pray. It's been one of those days." I said, well, the door's open. And so I moved my truck, and I thought first, man, I guess I need to let people know she's here. And I thought, no, you don't. I walked in, and I just said, "Hey, I'm Scott." She goes, "Hey, I'm Gigi." I said, "Did you get a chance to spend some time in prayer yet?" And she goes, "A little bit." I said, "Have you been in our auditorium?" And I said, "Can I show you our auditorium? I find a lot of comfort and peace in there." And so we walked in, it's still dark, I didn't turn on the lights, and all of a sudden, I really, in my mind, wanted to go, "Hey, Gigi, it's nice to meet you, but I need to go back and work on my lesson." But instead, we sat down and we had a 30-minute conversation on the front pew where Don sits when he gets ready to lead singing every Sunday. And I heard a story of her life. And I heard her talk about how she felt empty. And I heard her talk about her broken marriage and how she's been single now for 7 years, and I want to be whole. And I did a whole lot of listening. I didn't really have a whole lot of answers, but I just listened. And what I hope that Gigi, what I hope she heard is that we care about you. That's what I hope. I think there probably could have been somebody that had better words. But I'm not sure that's required to love people. And I'm not sure Gigi needed words tonight. Now, what I hope is that she'll come back. How do we take the cross to Babylon? We care for the poor. We rescue abandoned children. We love people in crisis. We serve in the middle of the plague. We pray for those in the middle of conflict. We extinguish darkness by letting the love of Christ shine through us. So as we conclude tonight, let me give you a few maybe thoughts, challenges. Where do you feel pressure today to maybe be more like the Babylon where you live? What pressures do you feel like maybe this Babylon that I'm living in is trying to change who I am? What would it look like to carry the cross of Christ in that Babylon that you're dealing with? I think another question is, where do you feel the most temptation to withdraw? What would it look like to carry the cross in that Babylon? Maybe 3 challenges for you this week. What if you pray for it? You serve in it. And what if you speak hope to it? Pray for it, serve in it, and speak hope to it. I think maybe that's how you refuse to bow down. Maybe that's how you refuse to hate and you still live in exile. And maybe that's how you refuse to hide, because God has called us as resident aliens in the Babylon in which we live. Next week, Mark McIntyre will be back with us, and we will continue our study on Daniel, and I know we will be blessed in that. Blessings on your week. Next winter,